You've probably heard a lot about vaping in the news lately.
A severe lung illness linked to vaping.
Several mysterious deaths linked to vaping.
That mysterious lung illness that's linked to vaping.
People getting sick and even dying. But there's one important question most people fail to ask when they hear these stories. What exactly were they vaping? There are many different kinds of devices and substances on the market, and it can all be a bit overwhelming to people who don't use them. And in order to accurately explain why people are getting sick, the distinctions are incredibly important. So when the media or legislators talk about vaping and don't get all the facts straight,
the spread of e-cigarettes is a public health crisis.
All related to the vaping epidemic.
That just makes it all the more confusing. So let's try to clear up some of this to get a better understanding of these products and where they come from. Let's start with some basic terminology. Vaping is a verb, like eating or drinking. So when the news says something like
6 cases of severe lung illness linked to vaping,
that doesn't tell us a whole lot about what specifically caused someone to end up in the hospital. The term vaping is usually associated with nicotine and is used in devices most often called e-cigarettes, but even that's a pretty broad term. There are generally 2 kinds of e-cigarette devices, open and closed systems. Open systems are usually bigger and mostly called mods. They have more customization options and can be refilled with any standard e-liquid. Closed systems like Juul are smaller and easier to use, but have less battery life and produce less vapor. The e-liquid comes in pre-filled pods that are disposed of after they run out, but some can be refilled. THC vaping, sometimes called dabbing, has its own terminology. THC is the compound in marijuana that gets you high and comes in small cartridges or carts that attach to a battery, which look a lot like a pen. Now here's where things get a little more confusing, because there are some pen-style devices used for nicotine vaping as well. In the nicotine vaping world, those are still generally called an e-cigarette, but for THC users, it's most often just called a vape pen. Again, these are mostly general terms, but that is how most users would refer to those respective devices. Nicotine and THC vaping may have different terms, but the basic science behind how they work is actually pretty similar. First, we have a few necessary components to create vapor. There's a battery, a heating element called an atomizer, and a liquid. The battery supplies power to the atomizer, which heats the liquid to create vapor. It sounds pretty basic, but there are a few key differences in how these components work between nicotine and THC devices. Nicotine atomizers can vary in size, but are usually a lot bigger than THC carts. The liquids consist of propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, flavoring, and nicotine. The amount of nicotine is variable in open systems, and some people don't use any at all, and all of the ingredients are water soluble. THC concentrates are oils extracted from marijuana plants and are not water soluble. It is much thicker than nicotine e-liquid, and cutting agents are sometimes added to thin the liquid depending on the materials used in the cartridge. Most industry experts will tell you there's actually no need for additives in a THC cart. So why would anyone use them? First, let's take a closer look at how these liquids are manufactured. Nicotine e-liquid manufacturers are required to submit ingredient listings to the FDA and work in ISO 7 certified clean rooms. That means customers are getting the safest and highest quality products available. In states where marijuana is legal, THC manufacturers are also subject to the highest standards to ensure the quality of their products and are tested for potency, pesticides, and contaminants. But what about those additives we mentioned earlier? As more states legalize marijuana, there has been an explosion of new and innovative ways to get THC into your body. Unfortunately, for states that have not legalized, this has caused a boom of new products that are much harder for law enforcement to track. Word of mouth has gotten around about these products, creating a demand in states where marijuana is still illegal. This has led to many drug dealers either manufacturing their own cartridges or buying from legal states, modifying and repackaging them for sale in states that are not legal. Illegal cartridges are generally purchased unfilled in bulk from small factories in China that generally do not have the same strict quality standards as other major manufacturers. This can lead to lower quality metals releasing toxic chemicals when heated. Dealers then fill these cartridges with synthetic THC concentrates and dangerous fillers like vitamin E acetate. Many use these fillers to make their product look thicker and more realistic. So if black market THC carts are made to look the same as legitimate ones, maybe you can spot the difference in the package it comes in. Unfortunately, it's not that easy.
A cartridge that has a brand, that has social media, that has websites, and it's really hard to distinguish between what is a legal cannabis product and what is an illicit product.
Dealers are creating fake companies and stealing the likenesses of legal THC products by getting professional packaging manufactured in China. There are many places online where you can buy bulk boxes of legal products or create completely new packaging for a low cost. This gives a street dealer a more legitimate looking product that they can charge more money for. How does all of this tie in with the lung injuries that have been spreading across the US the last few months? The patients in these cases were diagnosed with a condition called EVALI, short for e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. The CDC announced in November that vitamin E acetate was a major cause of concern in these EVALI cases. And fluid samples from 29 patients found vitamin E in all of the samples. Vitamin E is actually a common substance used in everyday creams and supplements. It's harmless in those types of products, but can be deadly when inhaled. To this point, there hasn't been a single case of these lung injuries that can be definitively linked to any nicotine or legal cannabis vaping product. Vitamin E is known to be used in black market THC products because of its similar viscosity to THC concentrates, allowing dealers to increase their yield. And because vitamin E is an oil-based substance and nicotine e-liquids are water-soluble, this offers further proof that the likely culprit in EVALI cases can be traced to black market THC carts. Unfortunately, the CDC and many other health organizations have continuously warned the public using general terms like vaping and e-cigarette. That's why the terminology is so important.
Because vaping injury is still somewhat of a mystery.
Telling people to avoid vaping in this scenario would be similar to telling people to stop eating during an E. coli outbreak, and saying e-cigarette in reference to tainted THC products is just as confusing because most people who actually use these products don't refer to a THC device as an e-cigarette. And the confusion will most likely continue to result in more injuries and more deaths. Vaping is a broad term. It can encompass medical, THC, and nicotine devices. There are major differences between them and the substances used in them. Both the nicotine vaping and marijuana industries have been fighting for many years, asking for stronger regulations to keep their devices out of children's hands and their products safe. These lung illnesses are an illegal black market problem that will continue to grow if policymakers continue in their efforts to prohibit vaping. Legitimate retailers and manufacturers are being put out of business because of it. But the demand for these products is still there. The only ones that may be left to fill this demand are illegal drug dealers that do not follow any safe manufacturing standards, state or federal laws. They will continue to manufacture and sell during any prohibition. In fact, bans will just drive new illegal sellers to the market and increase the amount of dangerous products in our communities.